Chapter 580, Sengoku tells Shanks, since it's you red hair, I'll take responsibility. Chapter 907, Shanks meets with the GOROSEI and they say they arranged time on his request. One Piece Volume 4 Billion, Shanks is canonically revealed to be found as a baby on God Valley. Do you know what these three panels all have in common? They are all hints from Oda implying a mind-blowing conclusion. Not only does Shanks have celestial dragon blood in him, but more specifically, he is related to a GOROSEI member. This is a theory that I studied 48 hours straight to solve. The true answer as to why red hair Shanks is the way he is. Today we're answering why Shanks can sway over the admirals, why Shanks can meet with the GOROSEI whenever he feels like it, and why Shanks has more power than any other pirate in the story. The same power that allowed Shanks to sneak not only in Marineford but also Marijois, which allowed red hair pirate Shanks to speak with the GOROSEI, also known as the highest authority in the world. But before we jump into it, make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell to never miss the sickest One Piece theory videos on all of YouTube. Now in current day One Piece, we know that the GOROSEI members are all based on planets. Thanks to chapter 1073, the first GOROSEI member with a long beard and dreadlocks, his name was revealed as Saturn. Now I believe this is Oda's way of implying that Imu's the personification of the moon, but more importantly, I believe all 5 of the GOROSEI members are gonna have planet-based names. Now if you look into Greek culture and Greek theology, it's very evident that when they first discovered the solar system, they thought that there was 5 major planets that revolved around the Earth. Upon more studying in Greek culture, they learned that that wasn't actually true, and it was actually a whole bunch of planets revolving around the sun. Now, why does this matter, you ask? Think about Professor Clover. In his lab at the island of Ohara, he had a diagram of planets. Now, if you count them carefully, you can see there's 5 major planets with their own moons revolving around them. This is oddly similar to the original Greek belief that there was 5 planets revolving around the Earth. Now, that moves us onto one of those planets in the solar system, Mars. This is the red planet with a lot of crazy terrain and mountains. Keep that in mind. I believe one of the 5 GOROSEI members will be based off of Mars. But transitioning into the main character of this video, Shanks. We know one of the most notable things about Shanks is actually his pirate ship, the Red Force. Now, if you carefully analyze the design of the Red Force, it's very obvious that Oda based that ship off of a Bracker ship. A Bracker ship is very common in Norse culture, and it's very obvious that Oda took inspiration. So that's why I believe that's a slight clue implying that Shanks is based off of Norse theology. Now, you're probably wondering who could Shanks possibly be based on? Now, what if I told you I have an answer for that? A person from Norse culture that relates to Shanks one-to-one. Tyr. This was a man that had red hair, a missing arm, and was known as a swordsman. It was actually said that he gave up his arm for a noble cause, which reminds me of how Shanks gave up his arm. Shanks himself said that he gave up his arm for the new generation. He basically gave it up for Luffy. Now, as to what that means at a deeper context on a deeper level, your guess is as good as mine. But it's very clear that the character of Shanks is heavily based off of Tyr, which is kind of ironic because Shanks is a top tier character, no pun intended. And speaking about top tier assets, I invite you guys to check out a top tier brand known as NordVPN. NordVPN is one of the biggest VPN providers and personally is my go-to option when it comes to VPNs. Not only does NordVPN keep me stealthy and safe like Shanks, but it offers way too many benefits to ignore. For an example, don't you hate when you come across fake sites online that mimic the real ones? NordVPN's threat protection guarantees your protection when entering those sites. Or what about those fishy websites that try to steal your passwords? NordVPN has password managers like NordPass that keep your passwords protected like a Straw Hat member. Then there's also malware, which is basically viruses that try to steal and destroy your data. But NordVPN keeps your system squeaky clean, making you feel like Khalifa with the soap fruit. And finally, malvertising, which is those annoying ads you get on basically every website ever. NordVPN's threat protection helps you eliminate these threats, having you feel like Kaido using the Thunder Bagua. If you want to become the king of the pot or the king of the internet, you need to get hip to NordVPN. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. It's literally a no-brainer. Go to www.nordvpn.com/333VIL and get a 2-year plan plus a 1-month bonus and a special gift. Thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. But back onto the topic of Shanks and Tyr. It is actually said in the deep lore of Tyr that he's heavily related to the planet of Mars. Now when you think back to the GOROSEI, it seems like all of them are going to be based off of planets. One of those guys will most likely be based off of Mars. But I'm not actually going to go down the route saying that Shanks is a GOROSEI member. Yes, you could kind of make an argument for that. I suppose it's possible, but I think Shanks is far too busy being a pirate. But moving back to Tyr, it is also said that he is a god of war. Now, can we apply this to the character of Shanks? Of course. Not only is Shanks willing to step into a war and throw hands with anybody, including the world government, but he also has the power and the ability to end wars. If there's any character on One Piece that we know head to toe that can be the god of war, I think the best candidate is Shanks. Now again, when you look at the character of Shanks and you compare him to Tyr or Mars, it seems like he is the best person to fit those those criteria. But today my argument is not that Shanks is a GOROSEI member, but rather Shanks is the son of a GOROSEI member. Now throughout the story of One Piece, Oda does generally give these characters really great fathers or really important fathers. You can see this with Sanji and Judge, Luffy and Dragon, Ace and Roger, the list goes on and on. So if Shanks was a character that did have a notable father, that wouldn't strike me as odd. That would actually strike me as a pattern and if anything thematic. And to be fair, we don't even know who Shanks' father is, so technically you cannot shoot down the idea that Shanks' father is a celestial dragon, let alone a GOROSEI member. Now let's take this idea and run with it. Let's see if it fills any gaps in Shanks' character or other contexts in One Piece. Well, for one, during Marineford War, let's take a look at what Sengoku told Shanks. Right before the war ended and Shanks pulled up and he was just talking his smack, Sengoku told Shanks that he is willing to take responsibility for everything that happened. This to me is something extremely weird because at the end of the day, Shanks is not only a Yonko, but he is a pirate. Why would the fleet admiral or marines or world government accept Shanks or even take blame? The only way this would work, the only way this would make sense is if Sengoku knew Shanks was a person he had to respect. But if Shanks was a pirate, why would Sengoku be forced to respect him? Now moving on to the Reverie, we know that Shanks also appeared at Marijua. He made his way into the Room of Authority and he actually managed to sit down with the GOROSEI and have an adult conversation with them. Again, this brings into question, how was Shanks able to pull that off? If he is a pirate, he is a Yonko, and there's a bounty on his head, why would they allow him to go and meet with them? The only way this would make sense is if they respected them and they had to obey his orders. But if the only thing about him was he was a pirate, that wouldn't make sense. And we could even pull out crucial details. The GOROSEI even said, only cause it's you. Only cause it's you? He's literally a pirate, your enemy, your op. You should be smoking on his pack. And that's where the theory starts to crystallize. If Shanks was related to a dead GOROSEI member, this could be a reason why Sengoku respected Shanks and why they allowed Shanks to meet with them. Yes, you can argue that Shanks was a pirate and he went his own route, but at least Shanks would be the son of a GOROSEI member. If you compare Shanks to someone like Doflamingo, we know that his father Homing was a regular celestial. He wasn't a high-ranking officer like a GOROSEI member. But if Shanks was related to the highest authority of the world, perhaps the GOROSEI is willing to make that trade. Now moving on to another point, One Piece Film Red, or more specifically, One Piece Volume 4 Billion. This was actually a paper book that was handed out during the release of Film Red in Japan. But the amazing thing about Volume 4 Billion is it's all about Shanks and it gives us a lot of lore about him. And one of the most crucial details inside of Volume 4 Billion is the fact that Shanks was found as a baby at God Valley. It is drawn and it is said that Roger found Shanks in a treasure chest. Now I, and I'm sure millions of other people around the world, have speculated that Shanks is from God Valley. I wouldn't really claim this as a big W of mine, it's a pretty popular theory, but nonetheless, this was somewhat predicted. The important thing here is I believe this is a parallel between Shanks and Law. I believe both of these characters were hidden to a treasure chest to save their life. Think about Law's flashback. He had a great man known as Corazon protect him, but more importantly, Corazon had celestial dragon blood inside of him while protecting Law. So I'd imagine there was a similar scenario at God Valley where a celestial dragon protected Shanks. And what did he do? Hide him inside of a treasure chest, just like what Corazon did. But that's not all. I'm gonna take this to a whole nother level and it's about to get a whole lot deeper. So you guys know how there's a trope in anime and manga where a character will have a son or a daughter then immediately die? Yeah, I think that's the same exact thing that happened to Shanks. I believe Shanks' father was a GOROSEI member, and about the time that he had Shanks, or at least maybe a year after, he died. And I believe that this is the original Mars in the GOROSEI. Sure, there might be a Mars member right now, but I believe that Shanks' father was someone that used to be in the GOROSEI but perished. That's exactly why Sengoku says that Rocksteady Zebek was killing celestial dragons at God Valley. That's a very important detail that I can promise you will come into play. Zebek was killing celestial dragons such as Shanks' father. But let's actually move back to the topic of One Piece Film Red. During the movie, the GOROSEI actually had a speculation about Uta. They said that Uta might be a figureland because she's possibly related to Shanks. Now whether that speculation is true or false, it doesn't really matter. You have to read in between the lines. If they think Uta could be a figureland because she's possibly related to Shanks, this implies that Shanks himself is a figureland. Now I actually took the time to go through a whole bunch of websites online and I couldn't find anything about figureland, but I did find something pretty similar that is extremely mind-blowing. If you take a look into Spanish culture, there is a popular family name of Figaro. Now if you look at figureland in Japanese, it's pronounced Figarando. And if you look at the Spanish name Figaro, I believe this was Oda's inspiration for Shanks' family name. Now you're probably wondering, why did I cherry pick Spanish family names when it could be anyone around the world? The answer to that is very simple. All of the celestial dragon family names have been Spanish related. I believe this is very thematic and this is very intentional, where Oda is having celestial dragons dragons take on Spanish names. And this would actually tie into my theory on why the One Piece is the Aztec calendar. We know in real life that the Spanish took out the Aztec Empire around the same year that One Piece is in. But that's completely off topic. If you're curious to see the full breakdown, link at the top right of the screen. But moving back to Shanks and his father, I actually believe I have the full name of Shanks' father. I believe his GOROSEI name was Saint Figurlin Mars. And unfortunately, this father of Shanks, this Saint Figurlin Mars, died at God Valley. He was one of the celestial dragons that Zebek persecuted. Think about how beautiful and poetic this would be between Shanks and Blackbeard. If Blackbeard took on the will of Roxy Zebek and Zebek killed the father of Shanks, oh my god, that adds so much depth between Shanks and Blackbeard. But with Shanks' father dying, this whole GOROSEI member dying, I believe they had to pass on the name of Mars to another person in the Figurland family. A lot of people speculate the young blonde GOROSEI could be Mars. He seems like a hothead, he's down to go to war, he could be related to Mars. But another possible option is the bald GOROSEI, GOROSEI Gandhi. Yeah, I know a lot of people say he's from Wano, but let's be real, that's just a theory, we can't take it as headcanon. One thing we do know is he does wield a sword just like Shanks. Perhaps the bald GOROSEI is related to Shanks and maybe that's his uncle or something similar to that. And if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the time the bald GOROSEI is always talking about keeping the balance. It seems to be something of Shanks' nature and something that Shanks has ingrained within himself. But all in all, Shanks had a father who died at God Valley. He was a GOROSEI member that went by the name of Saint Figurlin Mars. Click on this video to see why Imu is the moon god and why the One Piece is definitely the Aztec calendar.